bit of a somber start to the morning today. Sun's out, bright and shiny, but first thing I've come across in my walk is this rather curious looking memorial. When I first saw it, I couldn't fathom why it had been commissioned, to be honest, because it looked like just a big black piece of curving steel. But then when I heard the backstory to it, it began to make a little bit more sense. Its companion piece is up there. I don't know if you can see that. And it forms a broken arch. And what does that mean? Well, a broken hull rather than a broken arch, because sadly, as we can see here, a vessel called the Estonia sank nearly 30 years ago. There's an ongoing investigation trying to determine the cause of the sinking. Here are the names of all those who perished, tragically. Even 30 years later, there's uncertainty over what caused the vessel to sink. A collision, perhaps, underwater, a submarine. Was it a Swedish submarine? I know Sweden's been involved in the investigation, but how long it's likely to go on for is anyone's guess. And if anyone will ever know the true cause of what brought down the vessels, remains to be seen. Here's a curious looking place. It's a bit fascinating to me, like a hobbit's bar built into an embankment of what used to be a part of the old medieval fortifications. Large mound of earth. What's behind the door? I don't know, but I think it's been closed a very long time. If you saw the video from yesterday, you'll know that one started up at Fat Margaret, the tower, not the hostel. But we're in the vicinity of the hostel again, and just a few hundred meters away. Over here is a popular entrance to the periphery of the old town, the eastern side. Yesterday I concentrated on the western side. Today I'm just going to take a little look at the eastern side. Obviously much has been destroyed. There is a part of a bastion wall over there, but this can be considered, I think, an entrance into the old town, even though, depending on where you want to put the boundary of the old town, you might say, well, it's actually outside of the inner wall, because in places you can still see traces of the inner wall, the curtain wall and towers. Some are in position still, but over time, clearly these quite old houses were constructed as well, so they must have fallen somewhere between the inner and outer fortifications. So we just passed a music school, and obviously we've got some bars and cafes along here as well. A gelato's ice creamery, I was going to say. Perhaps it's a gelatoery. incredibly fortunate to have this almost to ourselves. Now, what have we got here? Nice old train set. And some vintage toy cars, which have certainly taken my eye, as has this. I wasn't sure with that fintail if it was a hovercraft boat, but no, I think two sort of superhero type cars made of tin from, what would you guess, 60s? 154 euros if you want to buy one of those. Well, they are nice, aren't they? But 154 euros. Would they fit in my backpack? Maybe that little dinky one there, the tiny one, the yellow and blue one, if you can see it. But I will have to say no thank you on this occasion. But that's the kind of little place which would be fantastic to go into, either to get out of the heat of the sun if it did get oppressive here and the temperature rose abnormally high, rather like having a museum, an antique shop. I see them as a version of museums in a way, lovely places to dip into and see something fascinating and unexpected. And usually there's no pressure from the owner or the shop worker to buy any of the items. Of course, the other side of that is you might be so tempted that by the end of the day you're sitting back at your accommodation looking at this fantastic little toy or antique something or other, perhaps a piece of jewellery, and you're thinking, oh God, how much did that cost? Why did I get carried away and buy that thing? My budget's blown. There'll be no breakfast in the morning. But you've got to just exercise a bit of self-control, haven't you? Very, very nice. Antique shops, I highly recommend them. And in this part of the world, you'll find that there are some shops which fall between antique shops and second-hand shop. How to describe them is a little bit tricky, because you'll find that they focus very much on items from the old times, but a specific era, the communist times. So there'll be memorabilia in the form of posters, coins, banknotes, books, leaflets, that type of thing, and there'll be less of the furniture and paintings and clothing. But they can be equally interesting, of course, to those of us who didn't grow up in communist Russia, or communist Estonia, or communist Belarus, or communist Lithuania. Here we've got the Lithuanian embassy, actually. I'm only focusing on it because it's a rather attractive building, isn't it? But very central if you happen to be in need of a Lithuanian visa or if you're a Lithuanian in need of visiting your embassy. And once seen, not easily forgotten. Very nice indeed. Just over the top of these buildings, I see a tower, so you can get a sense of what I was talking about earlier here. Although we're not officially perhaps in the old town, we're outside this line of towers going along what used to be the eastern wall of the defences of the old town. And we're still seeing some attractive old buildings. Even this one is absolutely ripe for renovation. It's in poor condition. I don't see a for sale sign. Nobody's maintaining it or looking after it, but hopefully they're not just waiting for it to fall down so they can put something modern and hideous in its place. It would be completely out of keeping with this street if they did. And behind that green building, we can see another of the original towers. And we're approaching what I was reading is described as one of the only two remaining gateways into the old town. How much of a gateway is left, well, I'll leave you to decide. See, there is the tower and the wall, and it must have curved around here somewhere towards these twin towers, which are called the Viru Gateway Towers. And there's a bit of an unfortunate story attached to those towers regarding the gate, because as you will shortly see, the gateway, to my eyes anyway, doesn't actually exist anymore. The story goes that over 100 years ago, there was a plan to put a horse-drawn tram route through here, running between Cadriog Park, where I visited the other day, all the way up here to the old marketplace. And because the horse-drawn tram required a wider opening at this point, some bright spark decided, oh, in that case, we'll have to get rid of the hundreds of years old historic gateway. So they smashed through the original gate, and this is what remained, which is a bit disappointing in a way, but better than nothing. At least they didn't destroy the two towers as well. So yeah, this is undoubtedly the most popular entrance point into the old town, which is behind us. I'm not going in there right now. I'm going to walk this way and turn back at towards the end of this flower market, which is flourishing outside the Viru Gates. Viru Gates, Viru Towers, still called Viru Gate, even though the gate is long since gone. There it is. So that's what you're going to see on a lot of postcards and in people's holiday photos. But even the horse-drawn tram didn't last very long. Obviously, there is no sign of the horse-drawn tram these days. It's nice to get a little part of the city pedestrianised like this. Souvenir shops. shisha cocktail bar, fast food place, Hesburger, which is something like a Scandinavian take on McDonald's, from what I gather. Gesundheit. Oh, much needed if you're a pup. Got a dog who's out walking with you on a hot day like this. That's nice to see they've got a facility to provide water for the dog. Here on the other side of the road, we cross the tram line. Right on cue, a modern tram. Behind that combination of Metro Plaza 20th century facade and the glass and steel above it, beyond is the Rotomani district. One of those areas which used to be industrial but has been modernised and continues to be worked on and developed to bring it into the 21st century. But out of all of the things, this one actually is the most interesting to me. It's a little bit dark. The sun's hiding behind the monument. But if I get on the other side of it, you're not going to see the detail of the female figure here, who appears to be playing a musical instrument perhaps and singing. She's accompanying herself. And Merinid dates back to 1980. Dedicated to the Tallinn sailing regatta of the Games of the 12th Olympiad. So, the Moscow Olympics stretch their tentacles out as far as Tallinn. So, there's a long gap of 26 years there, which I can't explain. Over here, I'm going to mention something you're not expecting me to mention, but there's a nice little sort of old school disco with a Finnish flavour in there. It's a subterranean place, but it's large, spacious, friendly, not overpriced, and I'm talking from my experience of a few years ago actually, so it may have all changed, but it's called Amigo Cafe, or was called Amigo Cafe, and it was just good fun. An awful lot of people were just Finnish holiday makers. The music was 70s, 80s, 90s, rather than modern music, but it was very danceable and music for people to have fun with, and a lot of music from Finland itself, which I didn't recognise, but it's surprising how you start singing along with it in groans and splutters and laughter after you've had one too many vodkas, isn't it? But those were the old days. Of course, I'm not like that anymore. And here, a little ways away from Amigo Cafe and the mermaid sculpture, we have a glimpse of what you can see if you venture into the Tallinn City Museum. This is the town hall carpet, an ancient tapestry 500 years old. Don't want to spoil it all by showing you a good view of the whole thing. Pop into the City Museum if you want to do that. And over there, just something to bear in mind, here in the Tampsaare Park, there's a public convenience. So nice to have that available. And what have we got here? A collection of armour. That's going to put a smile on the face of a lot of tourists, I'm sure. Armour of the heavy cavalry, made by the order of the Tallinn Brotherhood of Blackheads in 1536. Now that's interesting because I didn't realise there was a Tallinn Brotherhood of Blackheads in the 16th century. When I think of Blackheads, I think automatically of Riga, because there they have the House of the Blackheads. I'll have to read up about the Blackheads and find out more about what they were, because in my mind I was thinking they were more a mercantile group, like connected with the Hanseatic order, but clearly from this there's a strong suggestion they had a military presence up in the Baltics. Music boxes, X-ray advertising. Gosh, the City Museum certainly covers a lot of topics, doesn't it? Sundial in carved stone. And how bizarre. The local boys of Kalamaya had their own gang in the 1970s, which consisted of around 40 young boys between the ages of 13 and 17. The badge of the gang was made by the father of one of the boys. So this is a different museum, the Kalamaya Museum. Well, 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 you would never guess that if you went to Kalamaya today. And over here must be a very important man. So the park is named after this guy, I guess. And he appears to have had two names. Anton Hansen, aka A.H. Tamsara. Oh, I see. So the Hansen wasn't a surname as such, it was his middle name. But perhaps he took two surnames like they do in Brazil. Is it Brazil? Portugal, where they have both the mother and father's surname. Perhaps he did the same thing. And here he is. Obviously a famous Estonian. Over here, I believe there's a very nice Italian restaurant I heard about. I haven't been myself. I always feel if I'm on my own, even if I'm tempted to sit down for a while and enjoy cake and a drink on my own in a cafe or restaurant, it seems to me that I'm out of place. I'm a bit self-conscious, which might sound strange as I'm walking around with a camera talking to myself rather a lot at the moment. However, yeah, I just feel a single person on their own in a cafe and restaurant. I am too aware of the fact that perhaps I'm just taking up space and the place would rather actually I moved on quickly, so I would free up table space and allow perhaps a couple or a small family, small group to occupy the table and chairs. And here's the entrance to that Italian restaurant I mentioned, which was recommended. Pomo, it's called, P-O-M-O. And if anybody does feel like inviting me, so that I'm not just sat there in the corner on my own feeling awkward, feel free to do so. I can only say no, can't I? It might all depend on who'd be picking up the bill, of course. What have we got going on here? Looks like a pop-up concert, perhaps, which wouldn't be entirely out of place because we are at the back of the opera house. And what a pleasant random surprise. Well. I guess the event is going to be filmed for Estonian television when it actually takes place. And the orchestra is having a morning rehearsal. Can't see the name of an opera in particular, but clearly this does say opera. Kropka EE. And here we have an obvious socialist realist image in the form of a sculpture from 1905. So whether this marks a failed revolution against the Tsar, I think if it had been in Russia around about that time, the Russo-Japanese War, I think, is coming to an end. And there was an attempted coup, I think, which failed. But whether that would have a place here in Tallinn, oh my God, sunshine. There's no other information in any language, just the 1905, so we're left to guess what the history of this actually is. So I can tell you now, if I sound convincing enough, you might believe, yes, I suspect it's connected with the failed revolutionary attempt in the Russian Empire to overthrow the Tsar. And you're probably not going to argue with me. The truth may actually be something entirely different, but yes, moving on. For any of you who happen to be a fan of Art Deco, particularly decorative elements of the Art Deco era, we have this little gem hiding away. It's now a building which houses various businesses, including a law office, so don't want to get in trouble filming if I shouldn't be filming, but hopefully an appealing light fixture up there. Yes, hopefully I won't get caught out by anyone. But here's a lovely 1930s interior with gorgeous decoration. Obviously, in acquired taste, a lot of people just walk past, but if you do like the Art Deco era. There's just a little sweetmeat here, something to enjoy. Very nice. Bit random, you might think, but caught my eye.